Serious, people who have survived a murder attempt by dumb luck. What's your story? Thank God for my nosy neighbors. I always used to hate how nosy they were. Until this happened. When I was about 10, I was riding my bike outside. My parents always let me ride my bike outside during the summer. But only up and down the street we were on. One day, a man in a van was parked across the street. He called to me, asking me if I had seen his dog and could help him find it. Me, being a dumb child, offered to help him find it. And I started walking towards his van. My neighbor, an older white lady, came bolting out of her house hooting and yelling, telling the guy to back off. The dude got back in his car in a hurry and took off. And it wasn't until many years later that I realized how bad that situation could have been. My dad has a client that owns a number of fast food restaurants. One day we were working at one of his stores, remodeling, and talking about robberies. The client told us that when he was just getting into the fast food business, he lived in Colorado. He was assistant manager at a chain that required him to wear a tie. A drug addict came into the restaurant to rob him and grabbed him from behind, putting a knife to his throat. He opened the register and the guy attempted to slit his throat anyway. Except the knife was dull and couldn't cut through the material of the tie. The client began to fight back and escaped with minor injuries. Addict went to prison and apparently he has the tie in a frame at home. Throw away because it got some media. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I was representing this guy that had embezzled almost $500K from his business partner. He was looking down the barrel at several years in prison. A bunch of his assets had been seized by the government. Was being sued by multiple creditors for north of $2 million. And was in the midst of an ugly divorce and wasn't allowed to see his kids. I was one of 3 lawyers he had: criminal, civil and divorce. He was drinking a lot and using coke. I used to get this incoherent phone calls in the middle of the night that ranged from threats to crying. He came to my office one day and asked for me, but I was in court. My secretary said he was perfectly civil. He then went to his divorce lawyer's office and shot him to death. Got stopped by the police a short distance away and was wounded in a shootout. He would later tell the cops that he had come to my office to shoot me that day and also planned to shoot his civil attorney. I have a friend who had a party at his parents' house when he was in high school that a ton of random people went to. He got super drunk during the party and went upstairs to go to sleep, knowing that his friends would watch the party for him. My friend woke up from his nap to a guy from his school sitting on top of him stabbing him to death. He was stabbed 7 times before it stopped and he laid there on the bed dying. The only reason he is still alive is because his best friend came upstairs to ask him if it was alright if he made a frozen pizza and found him. The assailant was put in jail and recently was released, and it scares me to know that a guy who wanted to know what it would feel like to kill someone, said during the trial, is still out there free. I jumped out of a moving vehicle. This was in college in a different country. There were commuter buses that takes us to and from the campus and dorms. I had to stay 30 minutes later for a project, so around 7:30 PM by then the commuter rush was gone. I was the only passenger and I was sitting at front next to the driver. He was acting already shady. It was dark and rainy. He made a sudden dock turn of the grassy unlit hill. He said something's wrong with the tires. I said I'm getting off. He won't let me. The hill leads to a cliffside where rapes and murders have happened before. I had the pointy stick of my umbrella facing him ready to jab if he tried anything, which he tried to reach grab for me. I jumped and ran straight to the highway where another commuter bus stopped, surprised seeing a girl coming out of the tall grasses. I saw the driver of my previous ride speeding away. Nothing was wrong with his tires. Mine's not extreme by any chance, but a couple of years ago my brother and I went to walk the dog at like 11 PM. We left through the side gate, live on a corner, and right as we exit I see this weird looking dude at the corner of the footpath walking weirdly towards us. Got bad vibes and told my brother to get the dog and get back inside. This dude is walking kind of side on and hiding something in his hand behind his back. As I'm getting my brother through the gate, the dude says something like, "Oh, I mate, can I come in? I need a blanket, I'm freezing." I just ignored him and went inside and locked the door. We then get a call from the people who live 2 doors up. The same dude knocked on their door and their 10-year-old son opened it to see the dude holding a f***ing hatchet. My supposed best friend decided that my wife and I were too perfect. Therefore it must all be an act, and I was obviously abusing her. He was at our house after I made an awesome dinner and we were having fun drinking and singing karaoke. I went to the kitchen to put some glasses away. Came back and leaned on the couch with him slightly behind me to the left of me. Then I heard a thunk and felt an amazing amount of pain on the top of my head. He had picked up the whiskey bottle on the table and smashed it into my skull. I was very confused as to WTF was happening. Then the blood started pouring. I didn't want to get blood everywhere, so I went to the kitchen. Dude is pacing back and forth saying weird shit. I thought about my gun, which was close by, but I wasn't thinking quite straight. He left. I had a huge concussion and still suffer side effects from it. My number 2 goal in life is to live longer than that a shat just so I can shit on his grave. Sophomore year of college, went with a friend to go hang out at his old college. We were supposed to crash with a few friends of his, but we met a few ladies and ended up at a pool party. Next day went home and my friend started getting calls from one of his buddies' moms asking if he'd seen him. Turns out in the middle of the night a few guys broke into the house, kidnapped my friend's buddy and roommate. Took their car and drove them out to the middle of nowhere and executed them. I guess it was part of some gang initiation. I was supposed to sleep there with my friend. I still sometimes think about it and get the shivers. Edit. Spelling. This happened in 1999 in Steubenville, Ohio. Someone posted a link to the wiki page in the comments. Thank you to all the people who commented. I posted this before work and then my phone went crazy for the next few HRS. I can't help but imagine the sheer terror that these 2 friends went through at the end of their lives. Nobody deserves this. I was 14 and outside in my garage petting my cat. It was November, so it was already dark by 5 PM. Someone opened the door behind me without me hearing. Grabbed me by my ponytail and starting dragging me outside. They hit me on my head with a brick and knocked me out. Pulled me halfway around my house when, I'm guessing this is when, they stabbed me on the left side of my stomach. This must have brought me out of my daze. Because my mom said she heard me scream from inside where she and my brother and sister were in the kitchen. They came out the front door and saw me bleeding out on the sidewalk. Called 911. Had 12 stitches, double layer, a severe concussion, and whiplash. Didn't eat and hardly slept for a week. They never found them. Edit. Somehow believed for nearly 14 years I was 15 when this happened. Turns out I was 14. Edited to correct. Second edit. Thank you so much for my first gold. Well, my mom got mad at me when I was 20 and I didn't give her money for her birthday. Which I'm assuming was to pay off drug dealers of hers. So she stabbed me between the ribs. Ended up getting stuck in the bone and had to get it taken out in surgery. I don't know if this counts because I didn't find out until 10 years later. When I was 7-8 years old. When my parents broke up. My dad apparently tried to kill me and my mother. Along with everyone in the house all the time. Including the cats. He failed to get in house. The 2 times he tried. Well, I DK if this counts as an attempt or not, but my wife, my kids and myself went to church one time and we ran into one of my wife's old flings. This guy followed my wife around and our daughter and kept trying to talk to them. So I confronted him about it and told him to back off. As we were leaving, he makes sure to yell across the parking lot telling my daughter goodbye. My wife forces me into the car and we leave. So I message the guy on Facebook to ask him what his problem is and he tells me that my wife and daughter are his friends and I have no right to tell them who to be friends with. I told him again to back off or I would call the police. Fast forward a week. I worked every other Sunday. I get a call from the pastor saying that they had to call the police on the guy because he was causing drama looking for me. When they arrested him, he had a backpack with him that had a sawed-off shotgun, meth pipe and some meth in it. Chilling with the bros drinking at a park. As we drive off to leave, a car coming our way almost hits us. Driver obviously reacts like WTF, and I guess the other car noticed. They turned around and caught up to us at a stop sign. Other driver asked if we had a problem. We told them stop driving like assholes. Then their back window rolls down and two guys in the back draw Glocks with drum magazines. We just kind of froze up at first, but then our driver pulled off hastily. Later found out those guys got arrested for shooting someone else that same day. If you're from the area I'm from, this will probably sound familiar. But I got absolutely blackout drunk at an end of the year graduation party and ended up having to get taken home early. Later that night, another student at the party ended up stabbing and killing 5 people. Turns out he had mental issues, schizophrenia, and thought everyone at the party was a werewolf vampire who threatened his life. He never went to jail but ended up being found non-criminally responsible instead. Not sure if this counts, but I was a lifeguard on one of the local beaches. I was out patrolling in the truck by myself and got a call for a medical aid at one of the condos behind the boardwalk. I grab everything and head over. This is fairly unusual, but we do respond from time to time to stuff off the beach since we're closer and do what we can until medics show up. Knock on the guy's door. Identify myself. And then enter residence. It's a younger guy. Clearly on drugs. Blood around the area of his wrists. And he's just looking at me dumbfounded. As I begin to ask him what the problem is, my supervisor walks in. Grabs my shoulder. And basically pulls me out of the condo. Turns out this guy had called in about committing suicide and threatened to kill anyone that entered the residence. Obviously they shouldn't have sent me in there, and it ended up being a pretty big deal with people getting reprimanded for telling me to respond instead of waiting for police. I was around 20-21 years old and walking home at about 3 AM after a night out, and I was absolutely plastered from drinking so much. I was about 200 meters from my house when a hooded figure jumped out from behind a bush and immediately had a knife pushing into my stomach as he grabbed my neck and tried pulling me in. Fortunately I was stronger and pulled away. He went to lunge at me with the knife when suddenly he stopped. Stared for what felt like an eternity but was probably a second or two, and then said, "Holy shit, race your spoon for. I haven't seen you in so long. My bad mate," and then walked off like nothing had happened. I still don't know who he was to this day. Walking home from my pregnant GF's house at the time. Honestly, it wasn't a bad neighborhood. Well, I'm walking basically just minding my own business. Past these guys, maybe 3 or 4 of them. They were heading the other direction on the other side of the street. Something told me to look back, and right as I did that, one of them had a gun pointed to the back of my head. I turned around fully and was just like, yo. They were like, "Give us your money etc." I had a wad of dollars and not sure if it was quick thinking, but I stuck my thumb in between the cash, pulled it out and threw it on the road, and it scattered. As they went to pick it up I bolted. These assholes chased me. I just run to some dude's house who, luckily for me he was cool, let me in, closed the door and called the cops. A few weeks later those same dudes were arrested for robbery and killing the person they robbed. These guys were from a neighboring neighborhood. So yeah. I posted this before. I still harbor a sickening fear when I am over my head in water. I'm now 77Y. Oh. Repost. Attempted drowning in Lake Michigan by a mental patient on leave with family. I was 8. He lured me into deep water by throwing my sand shovel. He pushed me under. I passed out. He was noticed and seized. They did artificial respiration on me. Men on the beach. Many were medics. This close to end of WW2. Still very frightened of getting in over my head. I'm 75. That shit doesn't go away. I was pushed off a cliff by a former friend at his own birthday party. He was 14 and I was like 12. We were on a hike, just the 2 of us, and he took a detour and we reached a steep cliff and he just up and pushed me off. I caught onto a tree root that was jutting out. There was a big tree growing right where I fell. The root grew in a way that part of it was exposed and made a surprisingly good handle. He didn't catch on and simply left me there. I was there for about an hour if I had to guess, until someone else was alerted to my presence and managed to get me back up. I still have nightmares about it. I don't know why he did it. But he had been an insane arsehole to me for a long time in retrospect. Edit. Nobody believed me when I told this to them. So he got off scot-free. I haven't seen him since. But I'm pretty sure he's still alive. A customer pushed me onto a roller coaster track in the station. I work in a theme park. Luckily rides are covered in sensors. And I tripped one, which stopped the ride. Edit. I was not pushed in front of a train. Nor was the intention to push me onto the track. I didn't press charges. There was no intention to actually have me dead. We took legal action through the business. Edit 2. This was over a height restriction. The dude's kid was too small to ride. Serious. The 18th of May. 2018. School shooting at Santa Fe High School. I was a sophomore at the time. Don't really want to dive into the details, but I remember running through the grass thinking that they were shooting into the crowd of kids running. Scariest moment of my life. But at least I'm here for the 1-year anniversary of it all. My brother has BPD and is totally incapable of controlling his emotions. He saw red and came at me with a steak knife and stabbed me several times in the neck. I guess I was lucky in that most of the stabs glanced off me as I was protecting myself with my arms. He didn't really strike any clean shots where it could have caused me to bleed seriously, but he wasn't really aiming. Few inches to the left and he could have hit a major vein. I was a child and in school. I wasn't feeling well and had to go to the nurse. As I was going there, an older student pulled me into an alleyway. He arped me and started choking me. Everything went black after a bit. Then I woke up him running off. I think someone had started to come nearby and scared him. I blamed myself. Still have issues with guilt. And it gave me a laundry list of psychological disorders. Not sure if this counts. But here goes. My ex so shot a loaded .38 special twice at my face. 3 times at the back of my best friend's head and at least 2 times at my friend so. The gun never fired. Prior to this nightmare episode, my ex had left the gun in a tire in the back of our car and it rusted when a water jug leaked. So had taken the gun to get reblued. But for some reason the barrel of the revolver didn't set right anymore. The pin hit every bullet at least once and hit a few others a second time. All the bullets had pin marks that were centered right on shell and inner bullet area. So tried to run over my friends, so then drove off and got arrested later. XO ended up committing suicide in jail right before sentencing for 3 attempted murder convictions. Thank you, leaky water jug in the back of my car. When I was about 10, I was hanging out at my older cousin's best friend's house. Her best friend had an older sister who had just broken up with a guy. He started with harassing phone calls to her that day and said he was going to come over even though she had told him not to. She got scared and called the police. So me and my cousin and her friend for some reason did not leave the house to go back home and decided to stay. A few minutes later there's a knock at the door and I decided to open it. As soon as I open it there's 3 guns pointed at me. Unbeknownst to me, the older sister had told the police her ex might have a gun. So I stood there in shock, not knowing if the guns pointed at me were cops or not, and it turns out they were. The cops searched the area and found the ex on the roof of her apartment with a gun. He apparently was not all there in the head and was planning on murdering the older sister that day.